I will kill him.
The wind came first, not loud, not violent, just enough to carry dust through the cracks of the canyon like a whispered warning no one wanted to hear. Out on the high plains of Arizona Territory, warnings were easy to ignore. Caleb Rourke had ignored them his entire life. He was a rancher by necessity, not by pride, a man shaped by droughts, dead cattle, and the long silence that followed gunfire. His ranch sat alone between two scorched ridgelines, so isolated that even outlaws passed it without stopping. Not because they feared him, but because nothing good ever came from the land around Rourke's place. Locals called it Drybone Pass. The old Apache guides refused to camp there. Mexican traders crossed it only in daylight, and every man who tried to build a life too close to its stone walls either left or disappeared. Caleb stayed. On the morning everything changed. He was fixing a broken fence line when he heard the scream. At first, he thought it was the wind again, that high, bending cry that played tricks on the ears. But then it came again, sharper, shorter, human. A woman. Caleb dropped the wire cutters and reached for his rifle without thinking. His horse, Dusty, stamped nervously as the sound echoed from somewhere deep inside the pass. "Easy, boy," Caleb muttered, though his own hands were shaking. People didn't scream in Drybone Pass unless something had gone very wrong. He followed the sound on foot, moving carefully between sun-bleached rocks and dead brush. The canyon narrowed as he went, walls rising higher, swallowing the sky. Then he saw it, a cabin, not one of the old abandoned shacks everyone knew. This one looked used. Fresh tracks cut through the dirt, a mule tied nearby, and the door stood slightly open, creaking as it swayed. Inside, the smell hit him first. Blood, sweat, fear. The woman was tied to a wooden support beam in the center of the room, wrists bound, ankles roped tight, her dress torn and dust-soaked, hair stuck to her face with sweat and tears. Her eyes locked onto Caleb the moment he stepped inside. "Don't," she whispered hoarsely. Her voice wasn't pleading, it was terrified. Caleb froze. "Easy, miss, I ain't here to—" "Don't touch that," she said again, nodding toward the rope around her wrists. "Please, you don't understand." Caleb frowned. He scanned the room, overturned chair, a table scarred with knife marks, something dark drying on the floor. No sign of whoever had done this. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She swallowed hard. "Men who didn't care if I lived or if anyone else did." Caleb stepped closer. That's when he noticed it. A small metal object woven into the rope, not a knot, a trigger. His stomach tightened. "Don't," she said again, louder now. "If you cut it—" The door slammed shut behind him. Caleb spun, rifle raised, but there was no one there, just silence. Then the floor creaked. Something beneath the cabin shifted. The woman began to cry. "They told me someone would try to save me," she whispered. "They told me you would." Caleb's heart pounded. "Who are they?" She looked at him with pure dread. "The kind of men who don't leave witnesses." A low clicking sound echoed beneath the floorboards. Caleb realized too late that the warning hadn't been for her. It had been for him. The clicking stopped. That silence was worse than any gunshot Caleb Rourke had ever heard. He stood frozen in the middle of the cabin, rifle halfway raised, eyes darting from the terrified woman to the warped floorboards beneath his boots. The air felt heavy, like the cabin itself was holding its breath. "Step back," the woman whispered urgently. Slowly, Caleb obeyed, moving one careful step at a time. Each plank groaned beneath his weight, and every sound felt like it might trigger something buried below. "What's under there?" he asked. Her lips trembled, enough to kill us both. Caleb had seen traps before, snares, deadfalls, crude explosives left by desperate men. But this was something else. The trigger woven into the rope wasn't meant to restrain her. It was meant to use her. She was the bait, he realized aloud. The woman nodded once. They knew someone would hear me, a rancher, a traveler, a man who couldn't walk away. Caleb clenched his jaw. He hated how right she was. From beneath the floor came a soft metallic scrape, like chains shifting. Then another sound, breathing, not hers, not his. Someone else was down there. Caleb crouched, pressing his ear toward the floor. The smell of damp earth mixed with something coppery drifted up through the cracks. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Since last night," she said. "They left after sunset. Said they'd come back to see what was left." "To see if anyone tried to be a hero," Caleb muttered. He scanned the room again, his rancher's instincts kicking in. There had to be a way to free her without setting off whatever nightmare lay beneath them. He noticed the rope again, thick, new, but uneven. One strand was different. Older, weaker. "Listen to me," he said softly. "I need you to stay perfectly still." Her eyes widened. "If you're wrong, I know," he replied. "But if we do nothing, they'll come back." A memory flashed through his mind. Another woman, years ago. Another scream he'd arrived too late to answer. He pushed it away and focused. Caleb slid his knife free inch by inch, careful not to touch the metal trigger. He cut the old strand first. Nothing happened. The woman gasped, then bit her lip to stay quiet. Another careful cut. The rope loosened just enough for her wrists to slip free, but the trigger stayed intact. For a brief moment, hope flickered. Then the floorboards shifted violently. A muffled shout erupted from below, followed by a furious pounding. "Too late," the woman cried. They heard something. The pounding grew louder, splintering the wood from underneath. Caleb grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door just as the floor gave way with a thunderous crack. A man burst upward from beneath the cabin, filthy, bleeding, eyes wild with rage. Chains dangled from his wrists. His face was half-burned, skin torn and blackened. He wasn't a prisoner. He was a survivor. "You shouldn't have come," the man rasped, dragging himself free. "None of you ever should." Caleb raised his rifle. "Who did this?" The man laughed, a broken, hollow sound. "The same men who paid me to build it." The woman stared at him in horror. "You helped them, they promised freedom," he spat. "Then they buried me alive when I refused to kill you." Before Caleb could react, the man lunged for the trigger woven into the rope still hanging from the beam. Caleb fired. The shot echoed through the canyon, deafening. The man collapsed inches from the rope, blood spreading across the dirt. For a moment, everything was still. Then the ticking started again. Slower this time, deeper. Caleb's blood ran cold. "That wasn't the only trigger," the woman whispered. "There's another one." The ground outside the cabin trembled. From somewhere in Drybone Pass, hooves thundered closer. "They're back," Caleb said, and this time they weren't coming to watch. They were coming to finish the job. The hooves came fast. Not one horse, not two. At least four, maybe more, tearing through Drybone Pass like the land itself was being hunted. Caleb Rourke dragged the woman out of the cabin just as the ground beneath it began to sink inward. Dust exploded into the air. The cabin groaned, tilting like a dying animal. its foundations finally giving in to whatever madness had been buried below. They stumbled into the open canyon, gasping for breath. "Up the rocks," Caleb ordered. "Don't stop." She hesitated, staring back at the collapsing cabin. "The trigger, forget it," he snapped. "It's already done." They climbed as fast as exhaustion would allow, scrambling over stone, while the earth behind them buckled and cracked. With a final, violent collapse, the cabin caved in on itself, swallowed whole by the ground beneath it. A deep, hollow boom followed, not an explosion, a release. The hooves stopped suddenly. Caleb peeked over the rocks and saw them, 4 men on horseback, dressed in dust-stained coats, rifles slung loose, eyes cold and patient. They weren't panicking. They were disappointed. One of them dismounted slowly and stared at the hole where the cabin had been. "Well," the man drawled, "looks like the trap sprung without us." Another laughed. That rancher always did have poor timing. Caleb's jaw tightened. They knew him. The woman pressed herself against the stone, shaking. "They're the ones," she whispered. "They call themselves collectors. They sell secrets, people." "Land," Caleb watched as the leader bent down, scooped up a handful of dirt, and let it fall through his fingers. "Shame," the man said loudly. "I was hoping to see which one of you screamed first." Caleb rose from cover. The rifle was steady in his hands. "Drybone Pass," he called out, voice echoing through the canyon. "You don't own it." The men turned slowly, smiles spreading across their faces. "Caleb Rourke," the leader said, "knew you'd come." "You always do. You killed people here," Caleb replied. The man shrugged. "People wander, the West decides." Caleb fired. The shot took the man clean off his feet. Chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the canyon, bullets splintering stone. Horses screamed and reared. Caleb moved with the cold precision of a man who had already lost everything worth losing. One man fell, then another. The woman grabbed a dropped rifle, hands shaking, then steadying. She fired once. It hit. The last rider tried to flee. Caleb didn't chase. He waited. When the dust finally settled, Drybone Pass was quiet again, but different. The kind of quiet that followed judgment. The woman sank to her knees, staring at the bodies. "They said no one ever survives this place." Caleb lowered his rifle. "People mistake survival for silence." They stood there as the sun dipped low, painting the canyon red, like the land was remembering every secret it had swallowed. "Why'd you come?" she asked finally. Caleb looked back at the ruins of the cabin. "Because someone once screamed for help, and I didn't listen." She nodded slowly. "What happens now?" she asked. Caleb turned toward the open horizon. "Now the West forgets their names." They walked out of Drybone Pass together. Behind them, the land closed its mouth, and the warning echoed one last time, not as fear, but as history.